How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video. And today, guys, what the brand new is going to be the tier list leading up to Nationals and talking about Battles and Chaos Origins, which is going to be really exciting because it's going to shake up the meta, bringing out new strategies, new cards, and support, which is really exciting because I feel like we need a shift in the meta. We need some new decks to check out. We need new ideas, new variants. So I think this is exactly what the game needs, and I'm very excited for this. I hope that you check out my sponsors down below in the description. Also, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so we can go ahead and hit our goal at 30,000. I would really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's hop right on into our first few decks here. So just to kind of speed past a few things, I'm just going to go ahead and throw these up. And it's going to be the obvious ones, which are going to be Cool Tune branded tier 1. Yes, they're the best decks in the format. 1.5 Striker, Mitsu, Doomsday, Elf Note. These are going to be your next better decks in the format that you'd want to be able to play. So these are going to be your top 6 for meta right now. And if you're looking for a deck to play, these are the ones you're going to want to be looking at. We are getting a bunch of new cards, which is very exciting because decks like Blitz are going to be meta warping. And it's not going to be necessarily like be-all, end-all, but this is going to be another deck that a lot of people are probably going to switch to, and it is very strong. It's already seeing results in the OCG as well, so this is a deck that you want to make sure that you are on top of, you understand what the deck does, and you are ready to play against it when it does drop to the TCG. If you want to see Blitz content, definitely let me know down below in the comment section. I can make a video on them as well, just so you know exactly what the deck can do. But I do think that this is going to be something that will see a lot of play in the TCG. The next one here being DDD. This is a tier 2 strategy. This really doesn't leave tier 2 from my tier list. I think that this deck is very good, but it's also very mono, and it locks you into DDD, and that makes me very turned off the deck because I do like to be able to play decks that can play a lot of variants. And DD as a deck also has some pretty high card quality, including just being able to play Caesar, right? So the cards themselves are really good, but it's also a very complicated deck, and you have to spend a lot of time really learning how to play this. So that's why it sees a lot less play, but it's still very strong. And in the right hands, I think that this deck can do insane things at a tournament. The next one here is going to be Magnet Warrior. I do have a lot that are going to be in tier 2 today that you'll see. The next one here is going to be Magnet, though. Magnet is really good at what it can do, and it has some cool variants as well, but it's a little underpowered for what the other decks are doing right now. So although it is very cool and it has a lot of use case, I do think that this deck is not going to be the best choice at the moment. The next one is going to be the chess deck. Now, shout out to Austin Schaefer for the idea of Draconic Tactics, just because it's the chessboard, right? And we don't officially have anything on the chess deck yet. We just have general ideas of what it does. But I do think, based on the general ideas of the chess deck, that it will be 1.5. Probably bottom 1.5, top of tier 2, but it's going to be very good at what it can do from what we know so far. Now for top of tier 2, we have Yummy. The deck itself is still very competent. It still does a lot. You still have Dominus Purge in the deck if you're playing pure as well, so you can play a ton of hand traps and still be able to do your combo. But if you're going second into something like Cool Tune, I feel like you're going to have a really hard time, especially if they snipe a Synchro. It's going to be rough. So that's something where top of tier 2, deck's still semi-playable, but it's not going to be my favorite at the moment. Same with like RB. It's somewhere in tier 2. The deck is pretty solid in the right hands. Still pretty mid at times, but it's still really good, and it's an extremely cheap option for tier 2. So if this is something that you want to pick up, you definitely can, and it has already shown that it can get a result. So definitely very cool and something that you should consider. The next one here being Orchist, again, just tier 2. Very strong deck at what it can do, but just really weak compared to some of the other decks and what they're accomplishing right now. And then same thing with Lunalight. It did have a little bit of a fall, and I do think that this deck is still very good. But again, we're just looking at the decks above it. And if I wouldn't place this deck above anything above it, then it's just going to be in tier 2. I'm looking at everything up here so far, and I'm like, listen, this is all miles ahead of anything that's down here at the moment. So I just have to put it in tier 2. As far as a sleeper pick, honestly, bottom 1.5 Vanquish Soul, this is still a very good deck. Most people only play to 1 Noroi anyways. Has a very solid Cool Tune matchup too. The resource grind game of this deck is really crazy and really good. And, you know, it's something where a deck like this won't just like go away. A lot of the pilots of this deck just kind of like put the deck down for now, but I think that we will end up seeing a pretty large resurgence in this deck because it's going to be really solid moving forward. You'll start really seeing what I mean by this format is going to be pretty open because we even have Malice bottom 1.5. I know that it didn't really do much at Columbus, but I do predict that moving forward it will. The deck is still very strong, and again, I think that a lot of people that played the deck before just put the deck down and played other things. The second this deck becomes more popular, I think that it's just going to be played a lot more. We're going to see it in a lot more top cuts. So we will definitely see Malice again soon. I'm sure that a lot of people will end up switching back to it. The deck does have a pretty crazy ability to just play all the banished cards, right? So definitely still very scary. And in the format, Craft, somewhere tier 2. I hate this deck, but it's just a stun deck and it's pretty good at what it does. So somewhere tier 2. Invoked will be somewhere up like top of 1.5. It'll be a variant and it'll also be its own deck. And I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing like IDS again, which is Invoke Shaddoll Dogmatica, especially with the new Shaddoll cards, right? So, I really wouldn't be surprised. Even though the Shaddoll cards, I would say like top of tier 2, I think that not a whole lot changes with the new support. I do think what is better for Shaddoll, though, is the fact that you can play a Wildbaz package, and you have Cartesia, which is going to be another way to fuse, which is something that Shaddoll always lacked. So having the ability to go into another engine that will let you fuse quicker is going to be really good for the deck moving forward in terms of innovation. And I do think that it has a lot of potential as a tier 2 strategy. Same with White Forest. I don't really think that much changed for this deck yet, but it's still going to be a really optimal deck that you can play with a ton of very good hand traps in it right now that has the consistency to take you far in a tournament. The next one is going to be Art Mage, somewhere in tier 2. Again, I think that this deck is okay. I know that it's had like a couple of results lately, but it's still something that's like very D2D-esque in my opinion. It's very combo heavy. It has to be in the right hands of the right pilot. And the deck itself is like pretty good, but it has a lot of drawbacks too. So like not necessarily my favorite. I put it in tier 2. The next one here is going to be the Phantasm Beast support. I think that that's going to be in Rogue. I do think that it's like very okay. It's like kind of mediocre, even though like the cards themselves are pretty good. You can play heavy poly in the deck now, which is pretty crazy. It's really good for that. But unless you're playing like a U-Bell variant, right? Not necessarily my favorite. I also don't really think that the U-Bell deck has legs to stand on at the moment because it's literally the worst deck to play into any Charmy right now. So it's really rough to try to push that deck along. More into the 1.5, we have the Light and Darkness cards. I think that those will end up being more of a variant than a full-on deck, but I could be wrong. I think that those cards' card quality are going to be really high, and I think that we'll see a lot of play for those cards in the new set, but I'm not quite sure how good, because I would say tier 1 if it's going to do what it's doing in the OCG right now, but it's kind of hard to tell because our formats are really different at the same time. The next one here is going to be just like pure Power Patron. It's the same thing. It's just like 1.5 right now. Very solid deck. It's something that you can play and do very well with right now. And, it's really cool because objectively, the cards are pretty cheap right now too. So as a 1.5 deck, you can play this deck for pretty cheap at the moment. Clown Crew, I would say this is more Rogue. I'm not the biggest fan of these cards. I think that they're really cool, but like they're kind of just that. They're kind of just cool, and not necessarily something that I feel like is going to be like super competitively viable compared to some other things that we have here. The next one here is going to be Fairy Tale. We didn't get the Voray. I'm pretty sure people are waiting on too, which is kind of crazy. But Fairy Tale also kind of like fell short at the YCS. Very cool deck, and it's something that I feel like will have more opportunities in the future. But right now, it's more of just like a tier 2 pick. And same with Trains, just being in Rogue. It's an FTK deck as well right now, so it's like the best one at doing it, but at the same time, not necessarily something that I'd be confident bringing to an event, right? Because it's Trains. I hope they enjoyed today's video because there's a lot to cover, and as you can see, our format is going to be very wide. There's going to be a lot to look at as far as data and how these decks are going to fare into each other, and if we're going to start seeing more variants or standalone decks with the new cards as well. So I'm definitely interested to see all the innovation, and I'll check you all in the next video. Thank you.